so we had like a one-to-one conversation, and he said he was into armed robbery. And so that night, in fact, they actually went and robbed.
I'm wondering what came into you that you had as a number, you were so sure you were going to go into that space. What just kept pushing you?
Yeah. Say, but if you are not from here, you don't have anyone here. Said once you're caught, you have they'll give you sentences that to set an example that Ghana is not a place that a foreigner can come and misbehave. And I start thinking, if something would have happened to me at that moment,
nobody knew.
Nobody knew where I was. Nobody knew where I came from. And for the first time, I realized also that since I came, and the people I was surrounded with, nobody ever asked about my life, my family. So there wouldn't be any way that my family would have been traced or knew that something happened.
I know you work with you work with another movie producer. You ended up in Spain without going through the struggles that you were planning to go through to get to Spain. And then you work with the New York Times. Walk me through that journey of how you got to the New York Times. All right, on today's episode, I have a friend and a colleague from Sierra Leone. His life spans from Sierra Leone, Ghana, Senegal, Spain, the US. He's done a lot of work across the NGO space, currently works in Senegal, still has his hands in work that is going on in Sierra Leone. I would say that I know his story, some part of the story, but not a full story. And I would say that is a good time to engage you once again that you are back here in Ghana. You indicated that your early days or your early ages, you were here in Ghana, learned a lot of lessons. And I'm more than happy to host you on the show. So once again, welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. I know of Sierra Leone, the story of Sierra Leone a bit. My wife is from Liberia. So I know the story of Sierra Leone a bit, but what was life like for you growing up in Sierra Leone?
So my story from Sierra Leone is that I am part of that generation that were born just a little into the war in the Sierra Leone. Okay. And then so my introduction into Sierra Leone and my early life has been part of the 10-year civil war in Sierra Leone. Okay. And so I was in primary school and just my early primary school when the war started. Okay. And then so I was in class 6 when we got our first rebel attack in my hometown, and that was in 1996. And then I lived there with my family. My father is originally from Guinea, but then I was born in Sierra Leone, and that's where I grew up. And it was at a certain point, and when the war intensified, we left. My mother and my brothers and we left, went to Guinea, and we lived in refugee camps in Guinea. Okay. So my father remained in Sierra Leone for a while, and then towards the end of the war, he was killed and he passed away towards the last years of the war. Wow. And eventually, so we couldn't go back to Sierra Leone. Then we just remained in Guinea, and then spent almost a decade in refugee camps in Guinea. Okay. And then from there, life just
happened.
Life just happened there. Yeah.
All right. So life in Guinea, how was that also like? How long were you in Guinea?
So in Guinea, the first time we went to Guinea was in 1997. Okay. And then, so we were in refugee camp in the Josadon along the border with Sierra Leone. And then, so myself and my brothers were going back and forth because we were schooling in Sierra Leone. And then, so each time the war maybe
went down
a bit in our part of the country, we would return and continue schooling. But then towards 1999 and early 2000, and then we just stayed in Guinea and didn't go back because that was it. That was the time when it got really bad, and then so I remained in Guinea until 2004. Okay. And then by 2005, I left Guinea. So I got tired of refugee camps, and then my dad has already passed away, and then life wasn't what we expected anymore, and I wanted a life outside of refugee camps. And so there was this man, his name is Mohamed Bex, and he basically, we were together in the refugee camps, and then he spent most of his younger age traveling across Africa, and then he wanted to go to Europe, so he traveled through the desert. And so he was like a mentor when we were in the refugee camps. And So according to him, he saw like a fire in me that he felt like living in the refugee camp and constantly staying there will quench it. So each time he will urge me to like travel and he said, just leave, don't remain here because you don't have a life here now. So, and so I had like a lot of things going on in the refugee camp as well, but at some point we got really tired and then I decided I would leave. But the thing that basically pushed me more to leave was there was a time when things were just imagine first for living in a refugee camp, the hard times that comes with it, the trauma from the war and then all of it. But then there's also the issue of livelihood, which was very difficult, when I was there with my mom and my brothers, someone has to be at home to help, make a living, make a livelihood for the family.
Yeah.
So I started up first by burning up charcoal and then and then cutting firewood and all that, and then but I was really I think the thing that was really to me at the time was that I wanted to be like the man in the house and for the family,
Okay.
So when I began doing like a lot of work that adults will do, even though I was still a boy, and then my mom didn't like the fact that I was being pushy too much in terms of like being in the bush and burning charcoal and all that. So this Mohamed Bex, I remember one day I was in the middle of the forest. I cut like a lot of trees, and then I prepared like a oven where we burn like charcoal. So I was there. It was also in the raining season. And I was there supervising, like just waiting to see, because once you set up the oven and then you wouldn't want to like leave it, because if it breaks and you're absent and then you lose everything.
You lose the fire.
So I had like this very small hut in the forest, and then I just stayed there in the middle of the night as well. And then it was raining heavily, and then part of the oven on the top of the oven busted, and then there was this gush of fire that came. So, but then I had that small ladder that I built from sticks. So I tried to climb on top of the oven to cover it up. And then eventually my left foot, I'll tell the story about my left foot.
Okay.
So my foot just went into the oven.
Okay.
And I started shouting. And the oven was big. And then, so because I had like people that helped me when I was building, the oven was big. And I was shouting. And luckily, man, Bex was looking for me. He looked for me in the refugee camp, so he couldn't see me. And then he asked my mom, and they told me I was in the bush. And then so he went there to look for me, and then eventually
found
me on top of the oven. And then so he grabbed me out, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And so I was grateful to him for that day. If it wasn't for him, I would have like either lost my leg or something else would have happened. And then so when I came back, and that was when he started urging me to leave, and so I left the refugee camp that was in Dabola in Guinea, and I went to Conakry, stayed in Conakry for a bit, and then eventually I decided I wanted to try what Mohamed Bex also did in his past life. So I wanted to like live in, and so I went to Gambia, and then in the Gambia I tried a couple of times going to Europe, and so I wanted to straw away to go to Europe in 2006 and 2007, and so whilst in the Gambia, I worked in the fish markets in the Gambia in a village called Tangier, and worked there for a bit, and then raised some money. And the first time I paid for a boat to go to Europe, and then we took up from Tangier, and I went into the boat, and we spent like days at sea, and then eventually the captain of the boat said the radar got burnt, so we had to go back to Gambia. But then one of the things that happened is that whilst we were in the middle of the sea, the captain would say, "Oh, let's pretend like we're fishermen, let's catch some fish, and then we'll return. And then so if the coast guides come, they will see us fishing, we'll say we're fishermen." And then he said the radar got burnt, and I remember we were with some 2 Nigerian ladies in the boat. And then they got really angry. They said, "No, we have to continue, we can't go back." And there was a fight in the boat. And then eventually we decided to return back to Gambia. Yeah. But what happened was that the boats that we took wasn't really a boat that was going to Europe. It was a fisherman boat. They were just scammers.
They were just coming you. They were just going fishing.
Us, yeah. So they were just they took us on a fishing expedition and everything. So we came back, and so I tried again for a second time. Got the same story. And I said, probably this is not meant for me. So then the third time, myself and a couple of friends in the Gambia, we basically tried again. We said, let's just keep trying. Hopefully we'll make it. And I paid some money, and then we were supposed to leave on a Friday. And then they said, we're leaving Friday at 8. And because usually the boat will leave at night.
Okay.
And then, so when we went there, I was at home waiting to leave at night. And then in the evening, I came to the shore. And they told me the boat has already left, and I already paid for this boat. And the boat left in the morning instead of in the evening, because sometimes they will give like different times to different people. So in fact, that was the actual boat that made it to Spain.
Wow.
And then then I realized that
it wasn't for you.
It wasn't for me.
Because the actual boat that was supposed to leave for Spain actually
was the one
left, and you went on board.
And then I realized it was part of also destiny and all. So I left now the Gambia, and I went to Mali. So my hope was that once I get to Mali, I would go through the desert to Morocco, and then hopefully find ways to Europe as well.
So how did you know all this? That you could go to Mali, then cross to Morocco, and then...
But there was a lot of information at the time. Like once you want to travel, I would sit down in the coffee shops, like attire bases and coffee shops, and listen to people's stories, and then find out more and ask people around. And then there were people that are willing. But part of it also was my stories with Mohamed Bax in the refugee camp also like inspired that. And so I knew part of, like, he told me who to ask, where to look, and then and so that's it. So, and then once I got to Mali, I stayed in Bamako for a month. And then the second month, and then I decided I was going to buy a ticket. And I was advised that it was difficult, dangerous to travel from Mali to Morocco. Okay. So I wanted to go to Algeria and then find ways to Italy.
Okay.
And then so I bought a ticket from Bamako to Gao, and then to Goa. And whilst at the park, I was waiting for the bus to get filled before going to Goa. And then a woman came, and I remember this woman came. She met me at the car park, and then she asked me where I was going. And then I said I was going to Goa. And then she said, "Are you traveling alone?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Does your mommy know you're traveling?" And I said, "No." And she's like, "Please don't go." It's like, "What happened?" And she said, she said her son left Mali, and he didn't say goodbye, and he wanted to go to Europe, and on his way to Algeria. I think in Algeria, and then the boy died, and so she spent most of her time now going to the park, always trying to warn younger people of my age not to try. So she tried convincing me, and I looked and I was like, "No, man, you don't know me, you don't know you don't know my story,
you don't know
where
I
came from, and I've got like a family in a refugee camp that are struggling, and life has been, has beaten the hell out of them, so I can't just give up and go back." So I sat there, she tried talking to me, I didn't listen. And then I remember she turned her back, and then she was going. And then so I looked at the driver, and by the time I turned, I didn't see the woman, she disappeared. So it looked more like an angel or something. Yeah. And then once she disappeared, I got really afraid. And then I told the driver, I'm not going back to Goya, and I want to leave. And then I said, I'm not going again. And then so he gave me part of the money. He said, because my seats, because I'm not
leaving the seats,
and then he couldn't sell it to anybody else. So he gave me half of the money. And then I left Mali to Burkina Faso, and then from Burkina Faso I came to Ghana.
Whoa. So did you know about all these countries? How was communication for you in these countries?
It wasn't... First of all, I didn't know anyone in any of these countries. Yeah. It's just one of those things that I wake up one day and say I'm going, and then I just get there. Right. And except in Bamako, where my elder brother, he was also, we were together in the refugee camp. Okay. And then later he moved to Bamako. So I met him in Bamako. Okay. But I told him I was leaving. I wasn't going to stay there for a while. But other than that, the rest of the other countries, I don't know anyone there.
Wow. So now you from Burkina Faso, you decided to come to Ghana. What informed that decision? Were you were you considering Ghana as a transit point to move to Europe, or you were just relocating to Ghana?
So I was relocating to Ghana not because I wanted to go to Europe, because I watched a couple of Ghanaian movies and I saw how beautiful Ghana was, and I was like, okay, then I wanted to come to Ghana and then explore life in Ghana, and then if things don't work out here, I'll try another country. And then way back, I always had like a passion for movies, and I wanted to be an actor as well. And then,
Okay.
and I said, well, if I go
Okay.
to Ghana, I will also use this as an opportunity to explore the movie industry. And then so I entered Ghana, and then we took a bus to Kumasi. And then I arrived in Kumasi, and then I took a bus to Accra, and it was the middle of the night. So I remember we left Kumasi and we arrived in Accra around 2 or 3 a.m.
Okay.
And then got to Cycle. And then in Cycle, the bus dropped me. But on the way, I kept like talking to people in the bus to like say, I'm going to Accra, I don't know anyone there, can you help? But nobody was willing to help. And I don't know why, but nobody was willing to help. So once we got to Accra Cycle,
Yeah.
and I came down, the bus dropped up of everyone, and I stood there in the middle of the night. That was the first time in my life that I felt more, I've never felt lonely as I felt that night.
Okay.
Because it was the first time also that I arrived in a city that I don't know anyone at night.
Okay.
That I would say, this is my destination,
Okay.
and then I don't know. So I felt really alone. And I stood there, was holding my bag. It was a small black suitcase. So all the night, I don't know what to do. And then eventually I saw a group of young people. They were running across the overhead and then coming. They were running after someone. And then they grabbed the guy in the corner. They were beating up this guy. And so it looked like they were either thieves or like some people that are about to do something bad.
Right.
And I stood there and I realized that if this, like with my suitcase standing there alone, if these guys were thieves,
They'll come to you.
they will come to me. And then eventually I decided to go to them instead of them coming to me. So I walked over to them and this guy was beating up this guy. And then I said, excuse me, brother. And then the guy I was beating up and he turned and he was like, what is it? And I said, I'm a stranger here. I need a place to stay. Can you help me out? And the guy stopped beating. He looked at me. He was like, who the hell is this guy? So, and then he was like, well, what do you want? And I told him. He said, why do you ask me? Do you see me like your father? And I was like, I just need help. And then eventually he stopped beating this guy. And then he said, do you have money? And I said, if I had money, I wouldn't come to you. I would go to a hotel. I wouldn't come to you to ask him. And I don't know what informed that bold decision for me to even also answer him the way I did.
Okay.
And he said, where's your phone? I said, I don't have a phone. He said, where's your phone? And I took out a Nokia 3310. And I said, this is all I had. And then he took the phone, looked at it, and he gave it back to me. He said, do you have a computer? I said, no. He said, what do you have in your bag? And I said, it's just my clothes. And then he told one of the boys, he said, take his bag. And I was like, no, that's my bag. And he said, no, they're helping you, take it. I said, no, don't worry, I'll take it. And then so he took me to around the circle. There was a young man, a Hausa guy that was selling phones, and he sold like phones even at night. So I think probably they were working with this guy, and then he took me there, and then he told the guy, so my younger brother just came from the village, here is his bag, take care of his bag, and we're coming. And then he took me to Vienna City. I remember there was Vienna City around second. So he took me to Vienna City and then bought me food, and then he bought me bangkun. That was the first time.
So you ate bangkun?
I ate bangkun. So he bought me bangkun with soup, and then we ate, and then we sat there, and then we kept talking, and then he's like, where are you from? I said, from Sierra Leone. And then but he asked for my passport. I said, I don't have a passport. And I asked for him. But when I was traveling, I took an emergency traveling certificate from the embassy in Mali. And then I showed him to him. He said, but you're coming from Mali? I said, yes. I said, but I'm a Sierra Leonean. And then he said, don't lie to me. I said, I'm not lying to you. That's it, truth. And then he said, no problem. And then after that, he said, okay, let's go back to the shop, and they'll stay there until morning. And then when day break, he took me to a neighborhood around Kaswa, and then to a house, and he said it's his uncle's house. Said his uncle is in the UK, and then he wants me to stay there until I find a place. And it's a very big house. It's the first time I've been in such a big house. So we went into the house. Nobody was in the house, and it was just he opened and he took me in, and then showed me a room and said shower, and I showered. And then they prepared food, and then we ate, and then we sat in the living room. And then, so we were there for 2 days, and he asked me, why did you come to Ghana? I told him I came here to look for a livelihood. I wanted to live here. And then I told him also I wanted to explore the movie industry. And then he also told me about his story. He was like the most amazing person I've met And so we had like a one-to-one conversation, and he said he was into armed robbery. And so that night, in fact, they actually went and robbed like a store at a gold shop. And the guy he was beating was part of the guys that worked with him, but then he stole one of the gold chains and then kept it in his pocket. And they knew exactly how much they stole, and then so they were beating up this guy to get back the chain. And then he asked what kind of job I was looking for. I was like, I'm here for work and I'm willing to do any work. And he said, Ghana is difficult. You can survive here. I said, I've survived worse. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so 2 days later, said he was coming back to Circle, and I can stay in the house as long as I want. And he said, so he went and bought a lot of food and food stuff and everything that I needed. And then he said, don't leave the house, and even if you hear someone knocking at the door, please don't open. I said, sure. And then he left. So I was there, and every now and then he would call to check, are you okay? You need anything? I said, no, I'm fine. And for like 3 or 4 days, he came back, and because he didn't come to the house, and he came back to just check how I was doing. And I told him I didn't come to Ghana, to stay in a house. I wanted to like really
To work.
And I said, even if part of what he's doing, if that can give me a livelihood, I want to do it. And his face changed completely. He got really angry, and he was like, why do you think you can even, why do you even think along these lines? Said, you think what we're doing, we're happy about it. And I said, first of all, let me tell you something. Said, he's from Ghana. He said, in his words, said, I'm from Ghana. And if I commit a crime here and they catch me, at least I will have a family member that can free me up. Or even if they don't, because I'm a Ghanaian, but a judge might feel sorry for me, or they will give me lesser sentences.
Yeah.
Say, but if you are not from here, you don't have anyone here. Said, once you're caught, they will give you sentences that to set an example that Ghana is not a place that a foreigner can come and misbehave. So I tried like begging him. He said, no, you have to leave. I said, but I wouldn't also leave you like this, because I know if I leave you now, you will do worse than this. He said, there's a refugee camp here in Bunjibura, where there are a lot of Sierra Leoneans and Liberians and Ivorians. So I want you to go there, have a friend there, and go and stay with him. And then, because probably if you're with your people, you will feel much safer, and then you have a guidance. So he sent me there. And that's where I started like working in the construction field. Okay. And eventually,
So which year was this? When did you come to Ghana?
So I came in Ghana in 2009.
2009. Yeah. So 2009.
Towards 2008 and early 2009.
So we had just had our election.
Yes.
You were about having an election then. Yeah. So you go into construction, you go into movie production. How did you go into movie production?
So the owner of Venus Films, Abdul Salam, has been when I admire his production, Venus Films. I've always looked at Venus Films as a model for African movies, and so I loved like his production. So most times at the end of the movies, they will put like numbers and phone contact, and then so I always had his number. And even before coming to Ghana, I would call and I would say, I love your movies. And so when I came, actually, I reached out to him before all of this worked. And I reached out to him. I said, I'm in Ghana. I needed some help. But then he didn't get back to me. But then, so one day I decided, I came to Accra to look for work. So I met a Sierra Leonean boy in the refugee camp. His name was Mohammed, and then we came to Accra. We were looking for work. We went to back then at Coca-Cola, where Coca-Cola production. And so we met this woman, and then so we met like young guys that were carrying like crates outside. It's like, oh sure, there are vacancies. So they took us to the manager, the woman that was in charge at the time. And then we told her we wanted to job, and then she looked at me and was like, she was very open to giving us a job, but then when she asked where we're from, I told her from Sierra Leone, and then she changed completely. And then she said, her words were, if I give you a job, what will happen to my Ghanaian brothers? Don't you know that the space that you're going to take will be taken by a Ghanaian? And then she asked us to get out of my office and everything. And then so we got out. And so after that, we were just walking around. And I got to Mataiko. and I saw Venus Films Production. The banner was Venus Film Production. I was like, this is Venus office. So let's go upstairs and I'll just ask for Salam. So I went upstairs and then I asked for Abdul Salam. They said Salam is out. And then, but I met at the time Dante Mensa was there. He was the manager, the production manager for Venus Film. So I went into his office and I told him about how passionate I am about Venus and everything. And then he said, oh, you should call Salam. So I tried to call him Salam. And then eventually that was the time he picked and he said, okay, come to the office tomorrow. And then we came back to the office and I spoke with him about my story and everything. And then he said, he offered me a job, first as a production office assistant. And then also he said, but because I was coming from Bujumbura all the way to Mataiko to work every day, and then he said I should move into his house. So he gave me a home. And so I stayed in his house. And eventually he changed my life in Ghana. So in his house every day when it's when they're dropping the kids to school, they would drop me in the office and then give me food, and he guided me through the movie industry in Ghana, and I met a lot of amazing people through Venus, like the directors Frank Raja and then Phil Bernard. So and Dan, because Dan was at the time he was a manager at Venus, but he was a father figure at the time.
So let's have of your journey. So from Sierra Leone to Ghana and everything you've done now.
Yeah.
What would you say pushed you into the office of Abdul Salam? I mean, I know you had a passion. You wanted to. Even before you came, you had his number, and I'm here. Mm-hmm. I don't remember watching even movies at that time, but I'm wondering what came into you that you had his number. You were so sure you were going to go into that space. What just kept pushing you?
I think it's when you're determined to achieve certain things, you will never give up. And then I have numbers of people. I still have, like my dad, I have numbers of people like more than 15 years ago or nearly 20 years ago, and I keep numbers, and I try to keep in church, and I, like, even when I came, I tried calling, he didn't pick. I kept pushing because it's something that I wanted, and this is also, like I said, I admired him from afar, and I was hoping that when I meet him, it will also help change my life, which it did. It didn't. I didn't achieve my dream as to be an actor, but it gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about the movie industry. And that's, even when I moved back home, it was part of the things that shaped my career to what I am today.
All right. So I know you work with you work with another movie producer. You ended up in Spain without going through the struggles that you were planning to go through to get to Spain. And then you work with the New York Times. Walk me through that journey of how you got to New York Times.
So in Ghana, when I was in Ghana, after years, and then around 2012, I decided that it was time for me to go back home. And what informed that decision was that I realized that I've spent most of my childhood trying to be an adult, and I've missed my family, I've missed my mom, I've missed like everything about childhood that I should have. The struggles removed me from what a child should have enjoyed in terms of love and care, to being the adults that just wanted to, care for his family. And then so at some point, I remember one day Salam's car was delayed to go back home, and then he gave me transport. He said I should go home, so I took a car to Kaneshi, and then in Kaneshi I was walking on the overhead bridge, and then there was this mentally challenged guy who was walking behind me. And then I didn't even know, because it was, overhead bridge, a lot of people would crisscross and everything. And then this guy just shouted behind me, "Woo!" And I got really scared. I wanted to jump over the overhead bridge. And imagine, like, if I jumped and everything. And then and a lot of people grabbed me and then pushed me on the ground. And then, so they were like, "Are you okay? Is everything all right? Is everything okay?" I was lucky that it was a busy space, and somebody held me, and then it's like, "Are you okay? Is everything all right? What can we do?" And then so I was just there breathing heavily, and I was lost, And eventually, I remember this man holding me until he guided me towards till we went down
To the station.
to the station.
Yeah.
And then he asked where I was going. He took a cab for me, and then he paid. And then he told
Your driver.
the driver where I was going. And he said he should guide me until I got there. So I went home and I showered. And I was in the shower, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I realized that I start thinking if something would have happened to me at that moment,
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew where I was. Nobody knew where I came from. And for the first time, I realized also that since I came, like Salam and the people I was surrounded with, nobody ever asked about my life or my family. Like
Yeah.
so there wouldn't be any way that my family would have
could be
knew
traced or
that,
anything.
or knew that something happened. And I said it's time for me to go back home. And then so the next day, about a week later, and I told Salam I'm going back to Sierra Leone. I needed to go back to see my family. And then that was when I said I was leaving, and then he asked, "Where is your family?" And I said, "My mom is in a refugee camp in Guinea, and then with my brothers, and my father is late." And so he gave me transportation. He said, "Go back and see them." So I went back to Guinea. When I left Ghana, I went back to Guinea, and I met my family were still in the refugee camp. And then in 2012, and then I left. I went to Sierra Leone, and once I arrived in Sierra Leone, I found ways to, and I started working, found ways to bring my family back home. So I took them back from the refugee camps, and then asked them to return. It was time for us to go back home. So they went back home, and I started writing for, first we were doing like documentaries for local TV stations, but it wasn't profitable because the TV stations were willing to pay for, so they would say, "Oh, let's do it," and they would want to do partnership and all. And then I started writing for local blogs, and then so I thought like part of the documentary films I was doing, I could also translate them into stories, into readable stories.
Okay.
So I was writing online for an online blog, Sweet Salon. And then eventually, the Ebola outbreak came. And when the Ebola outbreak came, and then I was doing from like research, writing stories and travel stories for a travel agency in Sierra Leone, Visit Sierra Leone. And then once this journalist came from the New York Times, he needed like a local reporter that he could work with. And because Ebola was also very deadly, most people were not willing to come. Yeah. So this guy, Samuel Aranda, then he's a Spanish photographer, photojournalist, and then so he asked me if I wanted to go with him. I said sure, and then we traveled to the hot spots of the Ebola outbreak at the time. Yeah. And so after that, we stayed in church, and then he saw like my passion for journalism and how he said I wrote very well, and then he saw that I was willing to take risks. And then once he got back, and we did a couple of stories together and did a lot of recommendations. And towards the end of Ebola, just like what Mohamed Bex told me in the refugee camp, and then he said, your fire shouldn't be quenched here. You shouldn't stay here. He said, you need to go back to school. And then eventually he arranged for me to be sent to Spain to go and study.
Okay.
And then once I finished my studies in Spain, the New York Times had an opening in Senegal, in Dakar, at the Western Central African Bureau. And that's how I came to Senegal.
Okay.
And I covered for the New York Times.
I recall when you first told me your story, you mentioned how there were bigger journalists who also went for interviewed for the position, but gave up on it because it wasn't paying at them. They thought it were bigger than what was being offered. Yeah. If you can walk me through that, because for me, it's a learning. And I've always said that I've had jobs where I've told my employers, even if you didn't want to give me the job because you felt someone was better, I was willing to work for free. And when you said that part of your story, I want to hear it from you and how that also brought you to your next day.
Yes. So so at the time when Dion, the former bureau chief for the New York Times, and then she reached out, she said, "Oh, we've interviewed a couple of people, and then the job isn't paying that much." And also imagine that I've always dreamt of going to Europe. I've tried a lot of different routes going to Europe. And then so once in Europe, now I'm leaving Europe again to come back to Africa to work for a job that pays almost next to nothing at the time.
Yeah.
And considering what I'm having now, yeah. But then he said, if you're willing to take it, it's a learning curve for you and it's something that you can grow into. And the New York Times is, it's the biggest in the world. Everyone, a lot of us want to so, and I realized it wasn't just an opportunity. This is not my time to make money. It's my time to learn and my time to also build a career, So she encouraged me, and then I took the job, and once I took the job, in the beginning there are a lot of struggles, and then there were a lot of family responsibilities. In fact, I remember because I was moving back, and I told my family I got a job in Senegal and I'm moving to Senegal, and then they was like,
what?
Said, listen, we know you got deported. Don't be ashamed. Come back home. You can always start. I said, no, I actually got the job. And then, and even at a certain point, and when I came back, because I wasn't earning enough, and then I couldn't send as much as I'm supposed to, and I was also trying to settle down. They felt I actually got deported, and I was just afraid of going back home. And then, but it was later when they realized that, and I could go back to Spain and come back, and I, at least with the job, I had a lot of other opportunities, traveling opportunities, was when they realized that at least it was actually an actual job. I didn't get deported.
I like the part of the story. And I remember when I got, 2012, when you were leaving, I had just finished university. I got my first job, and it was paying 450 cedis then. And I remember my dad telling me that if you want to cut a straight branch of a tree, you don't stand on a straight one. You stand on a crooked one to cut a straight one for whatever you want to use it for. So that for me was also my learning curve. And I've always said that my very first job was more like me going into the world after school and relearning and practicing everything I had learned in school. And it's opened doors for me, all the organizations I've worked with. And when it resonated with me and in that line. And the fact that sometimes we feel we are too big for a role, and we end up missing opportunities. Now, New York Times, what would you say was one of the most powerful story you either broke or you wrote that you never forget?
It's a lot. I did a lot of good stories. I did, each story that I did for the New York Times came with its own burden, and it also came with its own perspective. And I don't think there was any small story, and also then a big story. I consider all of the stories the same. But there was this particular story that stood out, and we were doing reports on migrants, families that lost more than 3 people from around the Mediterranean Sea, like at sea. And so we were looking at all of these different families in Senegal, Gambia, and Mali, and so I left Dakar, and then we traveled to the border with Mali, around Goudiri. It's in Senegal, but it was the border of Mali. And I was there with a photographer, another Spanish photographer. And then we were just, at first I traveled there with Dion, and then later I went with the photographer. And so we're photographing the families, and there was this particular family that one of the 2 of the brothers have already died at sea, not 3. And then there was the 4th one who left and was in Libya, and he got sick in Libya, was beaten in prison, and then came back. And then when he came to the village, he was looking for ways to go back, but he was very, very sick. And it was just him and his younger brother that remained in the family. The rest of the family members were older people, older men, and then the women, because most of the women couldn't leave and all. And then this guy, we sat in outside of his hut, and we were just asking him stories. He was telling us about his journey as well, like I'm doing now. And then he said, give me a minute, I need to pick up something. But he was very sickly, so I need to pick up something inside. And he went inside. So we were just talking to his father, and then his younger brother who was around 14 at the time. And so we waited for a bit, and then his father said he was going in to call him. And then he went inside, and after some seconds, we just heard his father cried and was shouting. The man died eventually.
Whoa.
And he just died like that. This was somebody who we were just talking to like just a few minutes ago. He just said, I'm coming, I'm
to
going
pick
to take
something
something.
and
And then he went in and he just died. So that story really, really, stuck with me. And it's it shows about how like life, you're here, the next second it's gone.
You're gone.
Yeah.
You're gone. All right. So you and I met, I think, back in 2019.
Yes.
Yeah, when you came back to Ghana, and because of the water project that we're working on together. And I mean, when we spoke, we hadn't even spoken to this length. It was just about the project. And then you said a few things, how you stayed in Ghana. We also knew someone in common. This person also had worked on other radio and journalism programs. So I'm wondering how you got into the space. So from a journalist, a movie producer, you're now managing the project for La Cosa. How did you get into the space?
So then, first, I was very, very passionate when I was a journalist. I was very passionate about climate change issues, and the more I wrote about them, the more I saw the urgent need for change in terms of policies, in terms of actions that community should take. And so I met with Nick Weber, who is the president of the La Corsa and Doubles Foundation, and he's also the founder. So we talked a lot about his work in Senegal and how much his foundation was doing, and at the time they were doing a lot of work on health, education, agriculture, and arts, And then I told him, I said, I think you should consider like environmental issues as well, and I think these are things that need urgent interventions, and then I hope that his foundations will look at it. And the way we talked about them, and he said if I was willing to basically head the environmental aspect of his foundation,
right.
and that's how he gave me like an opportunity, and it's been an amazing experience, since I took up the job. We've done a lot of, we've changed a lot of local policies, and we've supported local initiatives in Tambacounda and across Senegal in terms of behaviors, in terms of community actions and youth-led initiatives as well, and even in working with women's group and in different areas of climate change. Yeah.
All right. So we're working on a water project together, and we've been doing this since we met in 2019. This year you are back to Ghana to see what we've done. I mean, we've seen the impact that you're making and the willingness to scale up. I mean, from the end of La Cosa and with you leading the team. What does the future look like for the water project for you? And I also know that as part of the water project, you've also introduced the agriculture projects that go hand in hand with all the water projects that you set up. How is this affecting the climate in the areas that we're working in, and what does the future look like?
Yeah. So the water project, part of the reasons why I pushed for it is that most of the communities where we're operating in Senegal are some of the driest in the region. And the impact of climate change is very real, and it's very, very drastic there. You can see it, and once you get there, you feel it. And then there's been like a shortage of water as well, and then most times when you drive around, you see animals dying on the streets and in the bushes due to shortage of water. So I thought part of our work is that we can help community deal with the impact of climate change, but we also need to provide ways for them to adapt to the changes, because our efforts that we're doing at the moment, they're minimal. We're doing our best, but there's a whole lot that needs to be done as well. So in as much as you want to advocate for behavioral change and then implementing other things, you also have to help communities to adapt to it. So that was part of the project for the water in the water project. Right. And now that we've got like the project going, and I thought, how can we also provide livelihood like agricultural initiatives that can be tied to the water? So first what we did was we provided like in the beginning it was just water for people to drink, and then we advanced it a bit that we will make sure we provide space for animals to have enough water as well. And then so now most of the animals there, like the cows, they're very healthy and they're having enough water. And then I said, let's take it further, let's do some farming, like small gardening activities along with the water project, and and we hope to do come up with a lot of other initiatives that can help push and help communities adapt to climate change.
All right. I mean, I must testify that every time I've been to the project site or visited Senegal, we are fed from vegetables from the garden, crops from the garden, and all that. And I see all the impact that La Cosa is making, not just in climate change and health and arts and everything that you're doing in Senegal and all the work project that you are leading. I wish we continue, support lives, help, and also scale up the work that we do. So there's another thing we share in common. We are both side hustlers, so we try a few things on the side, and I know you have your own lessons as well.
Yeah.
And you've stayed in touch with family in Sierra Leone, you've stayed in touch with government in Sierra Leone, you've stayed in touch with the media, and you're also trying to start businesses that you didn't start from Sierra Leone. I know you said you wanted to start a bakery when you got to Senegal. Yeah. I want you to tell me your lessons and how that happened.
That's a history. So when I moved back to Senegal with the New York Times and everything, I started making some money, and then I thought the best I could do, like I said, I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I wanted to like have a side hustle, I don't want to just depend on it. So I leased like a land in a neighborhood in Dakar, and then built a bakery. But then so when I first leased the land, I told the owner that I was building a bakery. He thought it was just a basic kind of bakery. And then so we made agreements, and then I signed documents and everything. And then once I finished building the bakery, I wanted more. He said he needed more money. And then so we readjusted, and I agreed to what he was doing because I've already started investing, but also I wanted to be, at peace with him. And then but then I noticed that he was doing a whole lot of things in terms of like trying to stop my work. And part of it was that he will threaten the boys that were working for me. But the other thing is that I didn't know much about the bakery business in Senegal, and I don't know how it works. I come from a tribe that is known for bread and coconut. So I thought just coming from that tribe alone can qualify me
for you to be to own a bakery.
So I started buying like tons of flour, and I would give to the bakery. Then my bread would be taken to the distributors at the shops and everything. And then once we collect, we go back and collect like leftover bread. So I didn't make like anything for months. I just keep putting a lot of money, not getting it back. And then in fact we will have to sell the leftover bread to people that have houses and all that. And then one day I was I was in the office at the New York Times when one of the staff at the bakery called me. He said the old man, the owner of the land is in the bakery. He's trying to like disturb them. And then so I went there, and then someone like one of the neighbors there, called me in the corner. He said, "This man has been planting juju on your land, around your bakery. So that's why you're not making money." I said, "No, I don't believe in those things." And I was like, "It's fake." He said, if you don't believe, tell your boys to dig in front of the bakery. There are a lot. He kept something there. And then and I went to this guy to the shop, and I met the old man was arguing with the boys, and he said, "I will deal with you. I will show you that." And I asked, "What's the problem?" He said, "Oh, he came. He asked for bread, and we told him we're not giving out free bread today." And then I said, "No, you just give it to him." And then he said, "I will deal with you." And then I said, "No, you don't." I said, "First of all, you're not entitled to bread here. We're giving you because if you want bread, you buy because we're paying for this place." And I said, "So," and he said. So he started like threatening the kid and all that. And then eventually the boys said, shout, and he said, "They told us what you're doing here, but one day we'll find out and we'll deal with you as well." And then this guy went and took like a shovel and said he was going to dig out. And so he dug in front of the bakery, and there was a lot of things like black magic that were buried in there. And I told the old man, I said, "As of today, I don't want to see you around my bakery anymore. Even if you're not the one that put this thing, I don't want to see you around. At the end of every month, I'll give you what I'm supposed to give you, but I don't want you to work here anymore." And then he told the boy that he will make sure this boy never walk like on his feet in his life anymore. And I said, if anything happened to this kid, I will hold him responsible. Then I went back. It was on a Friday, and I went back to the office. And on Saturday, and on a Sunday, we were playing the Dakar Championship of the Ultimate Frisbee, because I used to play Frisbee a lot. And then we were there with my boss, Dion, and we were just playing. And it was the final. My team was at the final. We were just playing. And then it was just about 5 or 10 minutes towards the end of the game. And Dion's son, Luther, my boss's son, so he was on my team as well. So he threw like a long disc for me, and I was at the end zone of the frisbee, and I jumped to catch the disc. And then once I fell, I broke my leg. My left leg again, the same left leg that in the fire. Yeah, so it broke completely. And then they called an ambulance, took me to the hospital in Dakar. And so my leg couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. So they took me to the hospital, and then we were at the hospital waiting for the doctor. It was in the evening. Most of the doctors have already gone home. And then they said I needed like an urgent surgery. And once they first took me to one hospital that said they couldn't do anything, they need to amputate my leg. And then, so they took me to a second one, then the doctor wasn't around. It was a lot of chaos, and then the doctors came, they said they can't do anything, they need to amputate my leg. And luckily Dion was there, and Dion said, no, we can't amputate him. Whatever needs to be done has to be done. But I was in a lot of pain. And then I told the doctor, I said, just go ahead and amputate it so I can free from the pain. And Dion said they shouldn't listen to me. And then she said, we have to we have to get you walking. So they about the next day, that night they did like a small surgery just to make sure blood can flow on my leg, because the arteries, like veins, were all cut off, and so there wasn't blood flowing. And then they did like that bypass, and then eventually, with the help of the New York Times, they evacuated me to Spain again. And then in Spain they did additional surgeries, and then I spent months that I couldn't walk properly, and then eventually, after about a year or two, I was able to get my leg back, and thanks to the New York Times and to the So that was my story. I don't know whether it was associated with the bakery or whether it was the threat that this old man did to this young man that part of it fell on me, or it was just part of destiny. But these are things that, for me personally, I see as part of those things that were destined for me to happen. And then,
Wow. I mean, I've had my own share of issues with landlords and lost investment, so I know how I feel about that. Yeah. I know you tried farming also. I've also tried farming. Yeah. Tried farming back in 2020. I know you also tried farming. How was the experience?
Oh, so after that, I thought it would be good to also try investing back home. So I contacted a couple of friends of mine and two other friends. One is an elder brother actually, and so Bakari, and another guy in the US. Bakari stays in Canada, and then we decided to invest into farming. So we wanted to farm corn, because at the time the poultry industry is booming in Sierra Leone, and there was a need for corn farmers. So we jumped into it, and it's something also we didn't research well. We didn't know what the dynamics around it, and then we having the right corn, the right land, the right fertilizer, and all of these things. And so I invested so much money into it as well. I was the one that invested more almost 80%.
I mean, it was your idea.
Yeah, it was my idea as well. Yeah. So I did about 80% of the investment, and that also went, just went dead. And I I lost that investment, and we when we harvested the corn, we didn't have like anything. I took like a couple of young people around that we tried invest for them to help us oversee the investment, like the farms. But there are a lot of other dynamics and that came with it, because one of it was that we took a consultant that he said he was an agricultural consultant, and so we took him and we paid him like huge amounts of money to help us oversee the farming, and then he give us like confidence and say, yes, this is, if you put this amount, this is what you get, and this is. And then every weekend we'll pay like his transportation plus like a daily fee to just go and
to the farm and
supervise.
see what's
then,
going on.
Yeah, and he'll go there, give us like good
Reports.
reports that things are going well. And then eventually when I went to Sierra Leone, and then I was there, we stayed, I tried like looking at what the farm will be at the end. But then it was just a huge loss. And when we harvested, we didn't even get 5% of our investments. But I thought it was just maybe something that I didn't research well. I said, okay, I will try something different. I took the same consultants and wanted to do like gardening and on. So that I did alone without my friends this time. And then that also led to a huge loss. And after that, I said, I'll take a break. And then, but then I'm reinvesting into a whole lot of different things now.
Right.
Yeah, reinvesting.
Yeah. My experience has been that sometimes you want to go back home, start something. Yeah. The people there or in the communities you're working with feel or think that you have so much money to throw away, and they don't take care of what you've invested in. Yeah. Forgetting that for everybody to benefit, whatever you've invested has to grow, and interest for everybody to even gain more. Yeah. So it's hard going back to want to start something. I've always felt that, and especially in agriculture, when you are an absentee farmer, you have an 8 to 5 job, you think somebody else can take care of it. It always blows into your face.
Yeah.
I mean, whilst you were here, we've had conversations about what we can do as young people for the continent. I mean, what we are doing in the water sector, other things that we could do in terms of youth engagement, employment, trainings, and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I see how committed you are to this, not just going back to Sierra Leone to help, but even in Senegal.
Yeah.
What would be your honest advice to anybody, any young person there, any young person listening to us who wants to help the continent? I mean, you've been through a number of these countries, been to Europe, you're back, you are here in Senegal, you go to Sierra Leone and back and forth. I say that if the two of us wanted to leave our countries today, it'll be easier for us to relocate. But we find ourselves here. Not because we are earning so much, but because we feel that there's a lot that we can contribute to. Sure. And if you invest here, the returns are far better than going anywhere else. What would you say to a young person thinking that it's always greener somewhere?
So my experience for being in all of the different countries, especially in Africa, is that I see there is a lot of fire in a lot of young people. The challenge is getting the right resources and the right ways of going about it. And with the rise of social media, it's created a kind of an illusion where we think that
it's easy
to make it, and it's not. It's where the other thing is that most young people are afraid to fail. They wouldn't want to try, So and I see it in a lot of different sectors in terms of like even like activism and political movements and everything. We've moved our conversations in terms of activism or even looking for things to conversations online on social media. Social media has given a lot of us voices, and we're grateful to that. But the problem is that we're not taking the right actions that we're supposed to take. So even let's say organizing, social organizing like protest and all these things, I believe in civil liberties. I believe in protest and all. But the problem is that we've limited our voice online and not taking like concrete actions on the ground.
The right
steps. And the other thing is that we want to hold others accountable, but we don't want to hold ourselves accountable, and it's a problem. We're not willing to hold ourselves accountable. We're not willing to evolve with the changes around us and making sure that we basically take the right decisions to push the continent. So my advice is that social media is great. We can push things online. But we can also take offline decisions, offline conversations. We can, and we should be willing to take risk. We should be willing to take risk. And most of our investments, you and I, what we've done, it's not like a huge amount of money. Sometimes it's just a little that you earn. You try to put it somewhere. It works. Good. If it didn't work, you try again. And we've been trying. And part of our consistency is why we're here today. It's part of the consistency why we keep having at least results, even if they're not the biggest result that we've hoped for, but we're hoping that it will happen. And then another thing is that I love social media, but I'm not a fan of social media. Because the thing I also have noticed is that we are all becoming influencers. But when you sit back and you look at yourself, what are we influencing? And we are not influencing welders anymore. We're not posting. Young people are not willing to be welders. We're not willing to be carpenters, and we're not willing to be farmers. But we're willing to be like commentators online to talk about certain things and all that. And then so our form of influence is I call it just about certain narratives that do not fit into the African context at the moment.
That's true.
Our continents need more than just
we need action.
We need action. We need innovators. We need technical skills that can push the continent, not the kind of influence that I am seeing on social media, and I think there is also a sense of responsibility that states, agencies, governments, organizations should also take responsibility for. What part of the thing that has been surfacing a lot in the continent, and I say in the continent because I want to address it in Africa, is about celebrating mediocrity. We tend to look at people that will do not so rewarding stuff online on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and then people will post like just random things that make them look stupid.
And then we celebrate it.
And then we celebrate it.
They become stars for that.
And they get stars for that, and they get paid for that online. And then you have the platforms already like TikTok and Instagram that pays them for this because of the
viewership.
Because of the viewership. And then we have companies like mobile telecoms and a lot of other agencies that will pick up these people and use them as brand ambassadors. When you have a young innovator, like your farm, and I visited your farm, I've seen the amazing things that you've done. How can we use your story and say let Harrison be an ambassador for agriculture,
young people,
so that they can look up to you and see that you're doing something great. We're not having that, and it's a problem. And the more we celebrate these people, the more we make it easy for others to see that there is a quick fix, there is a quick way to make money. I can be naked online, or I can do, I can dress awkward and do crazy stuff, and then
get viewership.
And once I get viewership, and I can get the money, and I can also be an influencer. We're influencing the wrong ways.
It's crazy. I mean, another thing I've noticed is everybody is becoming more of a consultant and an expert. People who barely haven't tried anything, haven't gotten their hands dirty, and because of the availability of AI and everybody sounding so smart with text and all that, everybody is now more of a consultant, and nobody's really wants to get their hands dirty. I like the fact that you stayed true to your country and to the continent, and I'm saying this because I know that with the kind of, I want to use the right word, not just exposure, the opportunity that we have, the privilege that we have working for the kind of organizations that we work for that are willing to give us exposure, funness to travel, meet other people, do things. They trust our judgment and are willing to allow us to take risk with funding from these organizations. There's a lot that we can do together. And I want us to talk about partnerships. I mean, you are from Sierra Leone, you are working in Senegal, I'm here in Ghana, but there are things that we are trying to do in different countries. And how young people could come together, like-minded people, share ideas, and then not everything needs money. How we can do this What are your thoughts?
So partnership, I've seen a lot of conversations about trust and about how people want to do a lot of solo stuff because they're afraid of and most of their fear, which is understandable, is based on experiences, and I've had a couple of areas where I've partnered with people and then eventually it didn't go well and we ended up losing a lot of money and then a lot of time that I could have invested somewhere else. But I believe that the best way we can win together as a continent is only when we consider partnering, when we consider collaborating. We cannot, no man is an island. We cannot work in isolation and believe that we will succeed. We might succeed, but the impact that we will have when we partner is far greater than what we will do when we work alone. And I'm a fan of partnership, and I'm a fan of trying different things with different people, and then seeing what is possible. And I cannot overemphasize the need for partnership, and whether within the same countries and working with young people coming together, or even from different countries. You and I have had a lot of conversations about what we can do, and we've seen the results, and we've seen how impactful it's been to communities and even to ourselves. So I cannot. I can't tell you how much I crave for people to partner and then to see where it will take us.
All right. I like that you mentioned trust, and that is one key element. Even in business, in partnerships, and whatever we want to do, trust is that element that will keep us going. Sure. And when we believe that even in my absence in your country, you do good by me, I'll do good by you, are things that get us going. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking of mind shift. Yesterday while we were at Suakope, we were having a conversation about technical skills and how you mentioned that people are not looking at that. Mm-hmm. We are in a continent that requires us to use our hands to do stuff. Mm-hmm. But a lot of us are going into learning the social sciences. Mm-hmm. I remember my brother then wanted to do electricals. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something that the family thought, He's now in the US, and he tells me, you were on our way here, he was telling us that someone he trained who he trained didn't even go to college as a manager for his sector. Yes. Mm-hmm. So now it's easy to get a master's, pursue a PhD and do that. And how do we shift our minds that whilst you go there and pursue a degree, pursue the master's, pursue the PhD, get something technical, get your hand into something, get a skill that you can work with.
Yes, I noticed in most of I think we need a drastic shift on our education policies in Africa. And if you look at where we are at the moment, you notice that most of our curriculum is
social sciences,
designed around social sciences.
Yeah.
And so every year when you look at our graduates, we have more lawyers graduating. We have more peace and conflicts students graduating. We're more lawyers when we have less cases in court or home. So everyone will start doing things that will either lead to either corruption or something they will use it to bully other people. And then peace and conflict when we don't. Most countries don't even have war now and all that. So we need to shift. We need to have a conversation on our education, and then the type of education that our continent needs. We have to shift from that the social sciences parts and then move to technical skills that are employable and that can basically help to develop our continent. At the moment, that's lacking, and it's a scary kind of thought to see that every year we keep moving on the same direction when things are not changing.
Two friends of mine, so all of us masters holders went to the mechanic with my car, and we spent about 2 hours there with the mechanic. And while we were leaving, in those 2 hours, the mechanic was counting around 4,000 cedis, which could be the monthly salary of a degree holder in some cases. And we were asking ourselves, did we do ourselves harm going to school? Because everybody's bringing their card there, is putting a machine, and before he puts a diagnostic machine, he's going to charge you. He wants to change anything. And growing up, we thought that the people who did technical skills were those that were not smart enough, were not intelligent enough, and they went on up to go and do the technical stuff, the electricians, the mechanics, the carpenters. But these are people that we need in every aspect of our life. And like you mentioned, no one is posting a carpenter, no one is posting an electrician. Everybody wants to do the easy parts. So I kind of emphasize the point that we need to look at our education curriculum and look at how we can shift and bring out programs that will shape our continent. And we as young parents coming up, how we can also guide our wards to do programs that are not just, I mean, it's good to do the IT, it's good to do other things, but you should be able to use your hand to do stuff as well.
It's important. I'm happy you mentioned the parents' side, because it's also on us as emerging parents to be able to instill certain kind of education on our children and our mindsets as well. I remember when for example, back then, before moving to Spain, when I went back to Sierra, I wanted to do some agricultural projects and everything, and because I love agriculture, and I wanted to do it. This was in 2013. And then I told my mom, I said I'm looking for land, and then so I can do agriculture. And then she got really angry. She was like, "Oh, you went to school and everything. Don't even say it so people, the neighbors wouldn't hear." And then so for her, it's like it's the thing that you do when you've tried all else and has failed. And it's not the kind of things that they would expect, people are like, educated people to do. They said, oh, farming is for the poor. So it's after you've tried all else and it didn't work, and then you can turn to the farming and all that. And we look at even the technical skills as well. Most times they would, most countries, I don't know if it's the same here but in Ghana, but most of the places that I've been is that they tend to take like students that didn't make that from lower and that didn't make it well, and then they said, okay, now you can
go and do technical
skills as a second option. So it's not, we've never prioritized technical skills as our first option. So if most people now are afraid to even do technical skills because they see
they'll look down on you.
They will see it as a dropout. They say, oh, he failed, he didn't make it here. That's why they sent him to a technical school, so institute. So we need that mindset change and then start to educate our younger ones that these are even better skills than now, but I don't want to hopefully say one is better than the other. But these are also great
skills that you require. I've listened to you, and I must say that I didn't think the conversation was going to go this long. And I've said to myself and almost every guest that I've had that when we look back in time and we see where we are currently, we see how all the dots connect and gives us a reason why we are here doing what we do. We are shaped by the things that we've been through, and we do the things we do because of everything that we've experienced growing up. And sometimes I feel that if things were handed over to us on a silver platter, we may not be here doing what we do. So I ask, is there anything, any advice that if you had for yourself, you could give to your younger self? You would say, this is what I would have done different, or this is the advice that I would give to my younger self.
If I would go back today and then talk to my younger self, I would tell my younger self to do the same thing that I did, because I don't, like you said, I don't think I would have been where I am today if it wasn't the journey, if it wasn't the track that the routes that I took, because those are what shaped me to what I am today. And if I should go back to my younger self, I would say do it again, and I would say do it again and keep doing it.
I agree.
There's no, I can't trade my experience is and what I went through. I can't trade it for anything. I am beyond grateful for those things, and because they made me who I am today. So I would say do it again. And
while you were in town, myself, you and Lars went to see Salam. and all the calls you've made to the people that you've been with, your friend from Sierra Leone who came to visit you the last night.
Yeah.
And I see how you've stayed connected to everybody who has played a role in your life and how where you've gotten to now. And sometimes we tend to forget that even though people might have not treated us the way we think they should have treated us, it is for that reason that we are where we are today.
Sure.
And it was a big lesson for me myself. And I feel that, I just look back and I see there's a whole tall list of people that I need to place a phone call to or visit the Zimba. And I want to understand, how did you get to that conclusion that, yes, I need to stay in touch with these people?
The first thing that I would say is gratitude. It's gratitude, and it's you have people who shape your life one way or the other, whether they did you right or wrong. And for me, like I said earlier, I have like a journal. I have people that I still have their numbers from way back, like 15 years ago, and like Salam's number, and I've had Salam's number from 2008, and and up to now he's using the same number, and I still have that number. It's not because I am a good keeper or like I know how to keep well. It's just because I feel certain when people play role in your life, it's important to keep in church.
Yeah.
Because our lives keep crisscrossing. We keep meeting each other every now and then. So it is important that. And for me, going back to Salam, to see him, and then like at least for him to also see where I am, and to know that
you're still alive.
He did the right thing to guide me at the time, because it's good that he guided me. But if I come back and then he sees me worse than the way I was, it's not just a disappointment for me. It's also, he will also feel like he failed at some point in his life. So for him to see where I am today, I hope, deep down in me, I hope that he will see that as an opportunity to also help nurture more people around him. Because he like in fact, one of the when we were in the car going to Kaswa that day, I was talking to one of the former film directors of Venus Films. He's now in Nigeria, and then he said, "Oh, I saw you visited Salam, and it was really good. Salam told me you came," and said, "Yeah," and then. And I told him, I said, "Thank you for what you did, because what you did is part of the reasons I'm here." He said, "Yeah, I didn't do anything." I said, "You don't know what you did, because for most people, it's just a sachet of water that they offered you. Or for most people, it's just a word of greeting, like beautiful greetings and good morning, how are you? Are you okay?" That alone, at some point,
you needed that to survive.
You needed that to survive. If someone can ask you, "Are you okay? What can I do to help?" These are questions that might just feel ordinary, but to some people, it means everything. So for me, it's good to keep in touch with these people who, when I was down, they will ask, "Are you okay? What can I do to help?" And when I was thirsty, those people offered me water to drink. And when I was in the street, they offered me like a roof over my head. Like I said, it's gratitude.
I like that. Finally, last question. There will be more to discuss when we get back on our team call. But what's next for you? Is there any dream that you are still holding on to? Is there anything that you want to do for country? Is there anything that you want to do for the youth of the continent? What dreams are you still holding on to?
Well, so at the moment, before now, about maybe five years ago or so, or maybe years back, I was involved a lot with social activism. I'll call for accountability and government. I'll push try to advocate for a lot of policies, but it was the public speaking and like trying to hold people accountable, holding myself accountable as well, and. Now, what I'm doing is reevaluating and trying to not just, like I said earlier, not just shout on social media and say change. It's about engaging these people and finding out what can we also do to support. So I'm in touch with a lot of government officials in Sierra Leone and in Guinea, where I also have a lot of connections. And I keep asking, what can we do to complement what you're doing, and how can we work together to change the narrative, to change the countries that the countries that we find ourselves in, because it's not just the responsibility of those in power to do the change, and then we will urge push them for it, but it's also important for us to collaborate with them and then push them where they can and criticize where they need criticism, and then also praise them where
they need praise.
And then also finding partnerships for collaborations. You and I have been talking about it, and we're looking for different ways to bring resources and the either manpower or even the capital that is needed to develop our countries. And I've been doing a lot of that in the background lately, and I'm grateful. It's opened my eyes into different perspectives in terms of what we should expect and from us as citizens as well. And other than that, on a personal level, like I said, I'm passionate about filming. I still want to act movies, and I also want to. I want to own like my own movie production.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm looking at establishing a radio station and a TV station in the near future.
That's all. That all sounds great. I mean, with the advent of technology and everything, all these things could be done online even before you start building the physical space. So, and with all the stories you've covered in the past, I know that it'll be something that you can do and do really well. I am also happy about the potential of us working together, not just in our countries, in other countries as well. I am more than willing to share our experience here, our work together, what we are doing for the youth here, for the small scale enterprises, local government engagement, the water space, everything that we do together. I'm more than willing for us to work together and work with other countries that just want to even engage us. What are we doing? What have we learned? What are the lessons we've learned? We are more than willing to share them. And I look forward to us doing bigger things, and may Allah keep us all safe.
Amen.
So I'll say that a big thank you for sharing your story. I've heard it before. I didn't know the details. I didn't know all the details that you shared today. And I know our listeners will be inspired by your honesty, your resilience, and the belief you have in Africa and its potential. So Jaime Yayah Barry, once again, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.